Kendrick Lamar is done playing nice, and people are saying JCole's been dodging the real smoke for years because every time they get close enough to compete, Kendrick doesn't spar, he erases the room, and the internet is finally putting the pattern on trial. Everybody thought they knew the deal with Kendrick and Cole, the big three, the equals, two legends on parallel rows, same era, same respect, same tier. That was the version everybody repeated like it was law. The safe story, the one that keeps the peace. But now, the timeline's twisting that whole myth into something uglier and way more specific, because fans aren't asking who's better anymore. They're asking why the culture keeps pretending it's close when the music keeps showing the same result. And listen, none of this is a courtroom. Nobody's claiming secret contracts or that somebody can't rap. This is internet commentary. Pattern recognition, the way the narrative moves when two careers touch the same record and one guy leaves with the moment. So let me break this down. Why people are saying Cole didn't lose to Kendrick. He avoided the type of collision that would make losing permanent. Now check this out, because this is where folks online start sounding like full-blown investigators. And I'm talking frame by frame, receipt by receipt, timeline stitched, pull up the old interviews type of energy. The claim is simple, but it hits like a brick. Every time Kendrick and Cole share oxygen on the same musical planet, Kendrick walks away with the headline. Cole walks away with, "He did good." And people are saying that difference matters more than talent. It's about impact. It's about who makes the room tilt. So fans started collecting moments, not opinions, moments, like little crime scene markers. First, those early era brushes. High power gets brought up a lot in these debates because it's one of the first times people felt that contrast. Not Cole was trash, nobody says that, but the way Kendrick's presence lands, it's like he's not trying to sound good, he's trying to sound inevitable. Like he's writing something you're gonna quote 5 years later without realizing it. Then the conversation jumps to Black Friday, and the internet treats Black Friday like an X-ray because that wasn't a regular drop. That was two stars swapping each other's beats like, okay, let's see what happens when we step into each other's worlds. And what did people online do? They didn't just listen, they compared. They start pulling up bar density, replay value, quotable rate. They're doing that fake stat science, but it still gets scary when everybody's numbers start pointing the same direction. You'll see tweets like, Kendrick had 11 quotables in 45 seconds, Cole had 4 in the whole verse, or somebody will swear they ran it through writing complexity tools and got 78% lyrical compression on Kendrick and 61% on Cole, allegedly, reportedly, internet math. But the thing is, even if the percentages are vibes, the reaction isn't. The reaction is real. Because when people talk about Black Friday, they talk about Kendrick's verse like it was a weather event, like something rolled in and changed the temperature. Cole's verse gets described as clean, sharp, respectable. And that word respectable is where the whole allegation starts bleeding, because respectable is what you say when you can't say unstoppable. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Fans swear the near collabs tell a louder story than the collabs themselves, because when the clash gets too possible, the distance gets too convenient. Think about it. In a culture that lives for battles, why do we keep getting the safe versions? Hooks instead of verses, a feature that feels like a cameo instead of a collision, a shout-out instead of a spar, a "we're brothers" speech instead of a bar-for-bar record that can't be walked back. People online point to the pattern like this. Kendrick keeps his biggest statements solo, like a locked room. Cole keeps his biggest flexes in spaces where nobody can step on him. That's the narrative. Not proven, not confirmed, but repeated so much it starts sounding like memory. And the reason it spreads is because it matches the way the moments feel. Kendrick doesn't come to do well, he comes to shift meaning. He comes with that layered, prophetic, like this'll age like scripture or like a warning type of pen. Cole comes with relatability, a mirror, a conversation. He's the guy who makes you feel like you're in the studio with him, like you're hearing his thoughts before he cleans them up. That's his power. That's why he's beloved. But when the internet is hungry for domination, relatability doesn't satisfy. So the fan investigations get uglier. They start pulling up old interviews where Cole praises Kendrick a little too carefully. They pull up old festival lineups, old tour moments, old "we might collaborate" clips. They slow the footage down like, look at how he answered, look at the pause. And then somebody will post a thread like, notice how whenever Kendrick's name comes up, Cole shifts to respect language. Not, I'll out-rap him. Not, we can go verse for verse. It's always, that's my brother. That's a genius. I love what he does. Which is mature, it's grown, it's not beef. But in internet court, that's treated like a dodge. And it gets even wilder when fans compare how Cole speaks on other rappers. If it's somebody he knows he can spar with, the tone is different. There's more playful aggression, more I'm the best energy. But with Kendrick, it's reverence. Now, I'm not saying reverence equals fear, but I am saying the internet doesn't care about nuance. The internet sees reverence and goes, he knows. And then you've got the insider whispers that always show up in stories like this. Producers allegedly warned them not to do a real collab. People in the room supposedly said it would end the debate forever. And look, we can't verify those claims here. We're not in those sessions, we're not reading contracts. But the reason those whispers stick is because they offer a motive for the absence. Because the absence is loud. In an era where everybody features with everybody, how do two artists with this much overlap never give the culture the one record that shuts everybody up? That question is gasoline. And when the internet finds a question like that, it starts building its own answer. It starts saying, because one side has more to lose. Now let's be clear, Cole is not some helpless victim. Cole is elite. Cole is top tier. Cole has verses that smoke entire careers. This isn't Cole can't rap. That's not the conversation. The conversation is, what happens when the room needs a killer instinct, not just skill? What happens when you need a verse that turns into a headline, not a verse that turns into applause? Kendrick's presence has that dangerous thing where people don't just like it, they submit to it. Like, okay, that's the moment, that's the line, that's the one. And the internet is saying that's why the big three wasn't a triangle, it was a hierarchy. And if you think that's too dramatic, watch how quickly people stop debating and start declaring when Kendrick's name enters the room. That's not rap talk, that's power talk. Now, let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking for the people pushing this narrative. And it's not about who's more talented, it's about branding, risk, control. Think about how each artist is built in the public mind. Kendrick is positioned like a natural disaster with a Pulitzer. When he drops, it's not just music, it's the culture speaking. It's think pieces, it's debates, it's your group chat turning into a classroom. Cole is positioned like the people's champion, the relatable genius, the guy who can rap at a high level while still feeling like a regular human who just happens to be exceptional. He's the artist you argue for because he feels accessible. Both brands are powerful, but they don't win the same type of war. Because here's the dirty truth people don't like saying out loud. In rap, perception is a weapon, and Kendrick's brand is built for moment dominance. He doesn't need to drop often, because when he does, the meaning lands heavy. His silence becomes part of the mythology. The absence becomes pressure. Cole's brand is built for consistency, for output, for control of narrative through work ethic. He's the guy who stays present, stays sharp, stays in rotation. So when you put those two brands in the same room, the risk isn't lyrical, it's narrative. Because if Kendrick outshines Cole on a true, undeniable bar-for-bar, same song, same topic collision, it doesn't just become a feature, it becomes a cultural timestamp. And then Cole has to live under that timestamp forever. That's what irreversible narrative shift means when fans say it. Not that Cole would be exposed, not that he'd be a fraud, but that the debate would become embarrassing, permanent. And that kind of fall-off hits different when your whole reputation is, I can rap with anybody. Now, people online love to bring up the Big Three era because it turned friendly competition into a scoreboard. Once fans start ranking, everything becomes political. Every collab becomes strategy. So the theory goes like this. Cole didn't avoid Kendrick because he's scared of bars. He avoided the context where Kendrick's bars become history. Because Kendrick doesn't just rap, he writes like he's trying to trap you in a quote, like he's trying to create a line that follows you around. Cole writes like he's trying to talk to you, like he's trying to make you nod because it's true. That's a different mission. And this is where the backstory gets even crazier, because fans start saying the avoidance isn't just in music, it's in how lanes split whenever the clash gets too possible. The minute the internet starts getting loud like, we need that Kendrick versus Cole record, suddenly there's a different move, a different feature, a different collaborator, a different direction. And yeah, artists grow, artists evolve, it's normal. But the internet doesn't read normal, it reads pattern. So online detectives start building timelines like it's a courtroom board. Red string, pinned dates, screenshots, old tweets. They'll say things like, Kendrick pops out when it's time to make a statement. Cole pops out when it's time to remind you he's present. And the whole debate becomes less about who's the best and more about who can survive the hottest light. Because the hottest light isn't a tour, it isn't sales, it isn't streaming. It's the moment when your verse is standing next to another verse and the audience chooses which one becomes the memory. Now, let's keep it real. Cole has controlled his career brilliantly. He rarely looks sloppy. He rarely looks lost. Even when he takes risks, it's measured. Kendrick disappears, reappears, and drops something that makes everybody act like they just got confronted by a truth they weren't ready for. So if you're Cole and your brand is precision, why would you willingly step into a space where Kendrick's chaos could reframe you? That's the self-preservation argument, not fear, strategy. And here's the thing. Fans swear that strategy shows up in the types of interactions we get. We get proximity, we get respect, we get love, we get brotherhood, but we don't get war. And hip-hop fans don't just want music, they want mythology. They want a definitive moment they can point at and say, that's the night it was decided. We got that for so many rivalries, but for Kendrick and Cole, we got distance, which is why the internet keeps poking at it like a bruise. Because the missing record feels like the real record. And the most savage part of this whole narrative is the question people keep asking. If Cole truly believed he could wash Kendrick, why wouldn't he want the win on tape? Not in interviews, not in vibes, not in fan debates, on tape. That's why this story won't die, because it's not built on one rumor. It's built on a gap in history, a blank spot where the biggest moment should be. And blanks make people write their own endings. But here's the part that hits different, because under all the rankings and GOAT talk, there's something more human happening. It's not just two rappers, it's two identities, two ways of surviving fame. Cole's identity is control, it's discipline, it's the guy who tells you I'm still me. Even with all the money, all the lights, he keeps the image clean enough that you can see yourself in it. Kendrick's identity is danger. Not danger like crash out, danger like truth. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't ask permission. So when fans say Cole ducked the fire, what they're really saying is Cole chose peace over chaos. And depending on who you are, that's either mature or unforgivable. Because hip-hop is the one genre where the audience loves you for being calm, but worships you for being willing to burn the room down. And you can hear it in how people talk. They don't say Kendrick is better, they say Kendrick is different. Like he's not competing inside the same rules. Like he's willing to lose friends, lose radio, lose comfort, just to win meaning. Cole fans hear that and get defensive because it sounds like disrespect. Kendrick fans hear that and get hungry because it sounds like dominance. And right in the middle of that is Cole, a man with a real legacy, a real pen, a real fan base, but also a man who has to live with the internet treating restraint like weakness. That's messed up, because restraint can be wisdom, but online, restraint is he didn't want it. Silence is he couldn't. Respect is he knows he lose. And that's why people say the narrative is career dangerous, because once the internet decides your caution is fear, it rewrites everything you did as avoidance. Even your greatest moments start getting framed like, yeah, but he never did it to Kendrick. Imagine carrying that. Every achievement followed by a shadow question, every compliment followed by a comparison. And then Kendrick, on the other side, doesn't even have to speak on it. His quiet becomes a weapon. His absence becomes a smirk people project onto him. So the emotional layer isn't who's better, it's who gets to move without being punished for it. Cole tries to keep the peace and people call it ducking. Kendrick stays silent and people call it winning. That imbalance is why this debate feels so personal to fans, because it's really about how we treat different kinds of strength. And it makes the story uglier, because now it's not a rap debate, it's an identity test. Now this is where things get interesting, because round two of the evidence isn't even about specific songs anymore. It's about behavior patterns fans swear they can map like a blueprint. And again, all of this is alleged, reportedly, speculation until confirmed. But the internet doesn't wait for confirmation. It builds consensus. So here's what fans claim the blueprint looks like. Step 1, the culture starts yelling for the clash. Step 2, both artists show mutual respect. Step 3, instead of a true bar-for-bar collision, we get a safe configuration, a hook, a beat swap, a near moment, a "we cool" speech. And the internet says that's not accidental. Because if the goal was to end the debate, the solution is simple. One record, two verses, same topic, no hiding. But it never happens. So fans started doing that thing where they turn into data analysts with no credentials and infinite confidence. They'll post charts comparing feature density per year, collab overlap, festival proximity, even who shared stages where. They'll claim stuff like Kendrick and Cole have been within 1 degree of collaboration at least 19 times. Out of those, 0 times resulted in a real verse trade. And then someone will go, that's the point. And it gets even crazier when they start pulling producer quotes and studio rumors, not verified, not sourced properly, but repeated like folklore. Producers warned it would end the debate forever. Labels didn't want a narrative shift. Management kept the lanes separate. Now, do we have receipts? Not the kind that would hold up anywhere official, but in internet court, repetition becomes proof. And the reason those rumors feel believable is because music is politics. Features are alliances, releases are timing. If you're Cole and you know your brand is built on being the approachable monster, why risk being framed as the guy who got outshined? Because let's keep it real, you can rap your heart out and still lose the moment if the other guy says one line that detonates the whole room. That's what fans mean when they say Kendrick blacks out. Not literally, not violence. They mean he enters a mode where the verse stops being entertainment and becomes a message. Cole's verses can be flawless, but Kendrick's verses can become a verdict. So the internet rewatches every shared moment like it's evidence of intention. They look at how Kendrick moves when he's around Cole. They look at how Cole moves when Kendrick's name pops up. And then they point to the audience reaction as the real scoreboard. Because reactions don't lie the same way stats do. Think about it. When Kendrick drops a verse in a shared context, the conversation becomes, "Did you hear what Kendrick said?" When Cole drops a verse in a shared context, the conversation becomes, "Cole did his thing." That gap is the whole case. Now here's another angle fans push, the who benefits from the myth question. Because the big three narrative benefits everybody until it doesn't. It benefits Kendrick because he can stay silent and still be crowned. It benefits Drake because the triangle keeps the discourse crowded. It benefits Cole because being in the top conversation is currency. But the minute the triangle turns into a ladder, somebody's got to be on a lower rung. And fans say Cole knows that. So when Cole positions himself as one of the greats, it's safe. When Cole positions himself as better than Kendrick, it becomes dangerous. Because then the culture demands proof, not vibes, proof. So fans keep circling back to the same missing artifact, the definitive record. And they treat the absence like an answer. And to make it worse, the internet has a cruel way of narrating silence. It'll say, if you don't do it, you can't do it. Which isn't fair, but it is viral. So every year without that record adds weight to the theory. Every interview where Cole praises Kendrick adds pressure. Every Kendrick drop where the culture bows adds pressure. And at some point, the debate stops being who's better and becomes who's willing. And the internet loves framing willingness as superiority. That's why people online say the verdict already happened, not in a battle, in the pattern. Kendrick doesn't need to chase Cole. Cole doesn't need to diss Kendrick. The narrative is doing the work for them, and it's doing it viciously. And honestly, that's the scariest part. Because in 2026 internet culture, you can lose a war you never agreed to fight just because people decided the missing fight means you knew you'd lose. Now, let's recap this in a way that really shows why people can't let it go. Because the timeline doesn't just debate, it obsesses. We've got two elites, two pens, two legacies, and yet the one thing the culture craves most, that undeniable same record collision, stays locked away like it's cursed. And it gets even wilder when you look at how fans talk about other matchups, because they'll accept friendly competition everywhere. But with Kendrick and Cole, they treat friendliness like a cover story, like the smiles are hiding a calculation. And you'll see people say stuff like, Cole is too smart to risk it, Kendrick is too surgical to waste it, meaning if they ever truly met in the middle, it wouldn't be casual, it would be designed.
So fans start spinning side theories, like maybe there was a record and it got shelved. Maybe there were verses traded and somebody backed out. Maybe executives didn't want a public loser. All alleged, all unconfirmed. But listen, those theories don't spread because they're proven. They spread because they're satisfying. They fill the blank. And then you've got the performance versus present side story people keep bringing up. Cole is the guy who could out-rap most of the game on demand. Kendrick is the guy who can make one verse feel like a cultural event. So fans argue, is rap about consistency or is it about moments that become history? That question alone keeps the comments on fire for hours. And here's another side angle, the tone argument. People swear Kendrick's tone comes off like warning shots even when he's not dissing. Cole's tone comes off like conversation even when he's flexing. So when both are on the same beat, the audience naturally leans toward the guy who sounds like the stakes are life or death, even if that's just style, even if it's just delivery. And honestly, delivery is half the war. That's why you'll see fans say, Cole can rap better than almost anyone, but Kendrick makes you feel like you're witnessing something. And that witnessing word keeps coming up. Not listening, witnessing. So even when Cole drops something crazy, the internet still treats Kendrick like the final boss, because Kendrick's mythology is built like that. And when mythology meets relatability, mythology usually wins. So the side stories keep stacking. Cole chose a safer lane, Kendrick chose the scarier lane. Safe lane equals longevity, scary lane equals dominance. And then people act like they cracked the code. But the truth is, we're all watching the same two careers and projecting what we want to see. Some people want peace, some people want war, some people want proof. And the internet is allergic to maybe both are great in different ways. That's not viral. Viral is somebody's ducking, somebody's running, somebody's winning, somebody's hiding. So the story keeps looping. Same points, new wording, hotter tone, bigger claims, until the comments stop sounding like fans and start sounding like jurors. And this story is still unfolding with way bigger implications than just Kendrick and Cole. Because what we're seeing here is how internet culture turns art into combat sports and then punishes artists for not bleeding on command. Think about it. We demand authenticity. We demand dominance. We demand prove it. But we also demand maturity. We demand positivity. We demand no beef. So artists end up trapped. If they battle, they're messy. If they don't, they're scared. If they show respect, it's cap. If they show confidence, it's arrogant. And the bigger conversation is about how narratives become cages. Because once the internet decides your identity, danger, or control, everything you do gets translated through that lens. Kendrick can go silent and it gets read as power. Cole can go silent and it gets read as avoidance. That's not just about rap, that's about branding. And it's a warning for anybody building a public image. The more you curate control, the more people wait for the one moment you lose it. The more you cultivate mystery, the more people project dominance onto your silence. So yeah, this Kendrick versus Cole debate is entertaining, but it's also a lesson in perception economics. In 2026, the story isn't just what you did, it's what the timeline can convince people you did. So here's the collapse point. People are saying the big three was never a triangle, it was a ladder, and Kendrick was always at the top because he doesn't need to compete often. He just needs one verse that people can't stop repeating. And the wildest theory is the simplest one. If Cole truly believed he could dominate Kendrick, the record would already exist. Not a rumor, not a maybe someday, a real song. 2 verses, no escape. But it doesn't exist. So the internet filled the silence with a verdict. And once the internet writes a verdict, it takes an earthquake to erase it. So stay locked in, because this conversation is only getting louder. And every new Kendrick or Cole moment is going to get dissected like evidence. So drop your thoughts right now. Do you think Cole ducked the fire? Or do you think fans are forcing a war that never needed to happen? And what's the most savage Kendrick moment to you? Hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're covering every twist. And remember, in hip-hop, silence can be strategy, but the internet treats it like a confession.